Welcome back to Retro Football Club. Today we're counting down the top 10 dirtiest players in Premier League history, the players who combined aggression, controversy, and relentless fouling to become legends of ill discipline. Now, when we say dirty, we don't just mean a single reckless tackle or a hot-headed moment. Some of these players were bad-tempered villains, famous for red card flashpoints and violent conduct. Others were simply tough, physical players who picked up cards game after game through pure commitment and gamesmanship. To make this list, we've looked at both red cards, the ultimate sign of crossing the line, and yellow cards, which show those players who constantly push the limits without always being sent off. Reds are weighted more heavily, but both totals matter in painting the full picture. With that settled, let's get into it, the definitive countdown of the Premier League's dirtiest ever players. We kick things off with a player who might surprise a few people, Gareth Barry. Barry wasn't the kind of player you think of as a villain. He wasn't two-footing opponents or starting mass brawls. But over a career spanning 22 Premier League seasons between 1998 and 2018, he set a record that may never be beaten: 119 yellow cards, more than any other player in Premier League history. Barry played for Aston Villa, Manchester City, Everton, and West Bromwich Albion. He was the very definition of a consistent Premier League midfielder. His fouls were mostly tactical, clever little trips and shirt pulls to break up play. He did pick up 4 red cards, but his legacy is really about sheer consistency. Gareth Barry was the master of the professional foul, and while he wasn't hated like some on this list, his numbers don't lie. He's the king of the yellow card. At number 9, it's a player who made life miserable for defenders, Davies. As a striker, Davies was unique. A veteran of Southampton, Blackburn and Bolton Wanderers between 1997 and 2013, his style wasn't about silky skills or pace. Instead, he was an old-school target man who absolutely dominated defenders physically. Davies picked up 97 yellow cards, the most ever for a striker, and 2 red cards during his Premier League career. Most of these yellows came from aerial battles, constant pushing, nudging, and the kind of elbows that drove centre-backs mad. He wasn't malicious, just relentless. Week after week, Davies gave defenders bruises and referees headaches, making him one of the dirtiest forwards the league has ever seen. The original hard man of English football, Vinnie Jones, takes 8th place. After starting the inaugural season with Chelsea, Jones spent the early Premier League era with Wimbledon, bringing his infamous crazy gang style to the top flight. Playing between 1992 and 1998, he racked up 5 red cards and 37 yellows, which might not sound like much by modern standards, but remember, refereeing was far more lenient back then. Vinnie's reputation came from intimidation and violence rather than just numbers. His crunching tackles, in-your-face style, and even his off-pitch persona made him the Premier League's first true villain. After football, he took his hard-man image to Hollywood, starring in films like Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, but his legacy on the pitch is pure chaos and carnage. At 7, we've got Alan Smith, a player whose role change made him even more dangerous. Smith burst onto the scene with Leeds United as a fearless young striker in the late 90s, known for his aggression and energy. He later joined Manchester United, where Sir Alex Ferguson reinvented him as a combative midfielder, and that's when the cards really started piling up. He later took his craft to Newcastle. Across his Premier League career from 1998 to 2011, Smith collected 5 red cards and 61 yellows. His style was all action and often reckless, which earned him cult hero status among fans, but plenty of suspensions too. Smith's worst moment came when he suffered a horrific leg and ankle break in 2006, bravely blocking a free kick, an injury that ultimately altered the course of his career. Even though his numbers aren't record-breaking, few players embodied relentless aggression quite like Alan Smith. Number 6 is Duncan Ferguson, one of the most intimidating strikers in Premier League history. Standing at 6 feet 4 inches, Big Dunk wasn't just about heading goals. He was about dominating opponents physically, most famously associated with Everton, where he became a cult hero. Ferguson also had a spell at Newcastle United. From 1994 to 2006, Ferguson received 8 red cards, tying the all-time Premier League record, though interestingly, he only picked up 35 yellows. This shows that his issues weren't about constant little fouls, they were about explosive moments of violent conduct. Ferguson was even jailed for an on-pitch headbutt while playing in Scotland before he came to England, and infamously caught burglars in his home, so you can imagine how that ended for them. On the pitch, his fiery temper led to numerous clashes with defenders, terrifying for opponents. Adored by Evertonians, Duncan Ferguson was a true one-off. Quick pause here. If you're enjoying this, don't forget to subscribe to Retro Football Club. Hit subscribe, turn on the notifications, and join us for more trips back through the beautiful game. Right then, let's get back to it. Sliding into the top 5 is Joey Barton, a player whose reputation goes way beyond just fouls. Barton played for Manchester City, Newcastle United, Queen's Park Rangers, and Burnley between 2003 and 2016, and his career was a mix of quality midfield play and complete chaos. On the stats sheet, Barton collected 6 red cards and 76 yellows, numbers that reflect both his consistent fouling and his fiery temper. But what really defines Barton are the incidents, including a training ground assault that saw him jailed, fighting with teammates, and famously, the last day meltdown with QPR in 2012, where he elbowed Carlos Tevez, kicked Sergio Aguero, and tried to fight the entire Manchester City team as they won the title. Arguably one of the most disliked players in Premier League history, Barton wasn't just dirty, he was box office, the kind of player who made every game feel like a ticking time bomb. In fourth, we've got Lee Cattermole, a player so synonymous with yellow cards that his name became shorthand for reckless tackling. Cattermole's Premier League career ran from 2005 to 2017, with spells at Middlesbrough, Wigan Athletic, and Sunderland. In that time, he picked up 87 yellow cards and 4 reds. Unlike Duncan Ferguson, Cattermole's problem wasn't sudden outbursts, it was sheer week-to-week recklessness. Every game, he seemed to be diving into tackles, arriving a second late, or picking up silly bookings for dissent. Sunderland fans loved his commitment, but opponents and referees saw him as a walking yellow card. If there was ever a player you'd bet on to go into the referee's book, it was Lee Cattermole. Now we're into the top 3, and at number 3, it's Patrick Vieira, one of the greatest midfielders the Premier League has ever seen, and one of its most aggressive. Vieira was the heartbeat of Arsene Wenger's Arsenal, captaining the legendary Invincibles side and winning 3 Premier League titles between 1996 and 2005, before later returning for several seasons at Manchester City until 2011. But alongside his brilliance came a nasty streak. Vieira collected 5 red cards and 77 yellows, many of them in fiery clashes with rivals, most famously Roy Keane. Their tunnel bust up at Highbury in 2005 is one of the most iconic moments in Premier League history. Vieira wasn't a villain, he was a leader, but his battles defined an era when Arsenal and Manchester United ruled English football, and he was never afraid to put his foot in. In second place, it's the man Vieira was always at war with, Roy Keane. Manchester United's captain, midfield general, and enforcer, Keane was the ultimate warrior on the pitch. Signed from Nottingham Forest in 1993, he played in the Premier League from 1992 to 2005. Keane racked up 7 red cards and 71 yellows, making him one of the most heavily punished players in Premier League history. His most infamous moment came in 2001, when he admitted deliberately injuring Manchester City's Alf-Inge Haaland with a shocking tackle that still gets talked about today. Keane's temper and competitive edge were legendary, but they also drove Manchester United to 7 Premier League titles and a historic treble in 1999. He was dirty, yes, but also a winner, and one of the league's defining figures. And at number 1, the dirtiest Premier League player of them all, Richard Dunne. The Irish centre-back was a stalwart for Everton, Manchester City, Aston Villa, and Queen's Park Rangers, playing between 1997 and 2015. Dunne holds a record he probably wishes he didn't: 8 red cards, the joint most in Premier League history. He also picked up 74 yellow cards, a huge total for a defender. Unlike some others on this list, Dunne wasn't a hothead, he was just an old-school centre-back who would do whatever it took to stop strikers. Sometimes that meant perfectly timed tackles, other times it meant hauling players down, committing last-man fouls, or lunging into reckless challenges. He was tough, uncompromising, and, statistically speaking, the dirtiest player the Premier League has ever seen. Before we wrap up, there are a few players who just missed out on the top 10 but still deserve a nod for their notorious reputations. Robbie Savage was the master of gamesmanship, collecting 87 yellow cards and just 1 red, a player who spent his career winding up opponents and referees alike. Martin Keown, Arsenal's defensive enforcer, racked up 5 red cards and 51 yellows, his fiery temper most famously on display during the Battle of Old Trafford in 2003. Manchester United's Nemanja Vidic was another fearsome defender, with 4 reds and 39 yellows, never afraid to leave a mark on a striker. Then there's Paul Konchesky, who quietly amassed an eye-catching 6 red cards and 50 yellows as a combative fullback. Eric Cantona, of Manchester United, was responsible for the most shocking act of violence in Premier League history, when he infamously kung fu kicked a Crystal Palace fan during a game in 1995. Despite his hard-man reputation, he only collected 2 red cards and 17 yellows between 1992 and 1997. And finally, John Hartson, a powerful forward with 6 reds and 33 yellows, who packed plenty of aggression into his Premier League spell. These players didn't quite crack the final list, but they certainly left referees busy and opponents bruised throughout their careers. And there you have it, the top 10 dirtiest players in Premier League history. Some were heroes, some were villains, but all of them left their mark on the game, and on a few shins along the way. Which player do you think deserved to make the list? Let us know in the comments. That's all for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to support our work, you can buy me a coffee. Just scan the QR code on the screen. And of course, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Retro Football Club, and hit that notification bell so you never miss what's coming next.